This is the Grow My Clinic podcast by Clinic Mastery, where we help you deliver amazing client experiences to grow your clinic. Well, welcome back to another episode of the Grow My Clinic podcast. My name is Jack O'Brien, and we're really excited to have MARIJN KORTEKAAS from PHYSITRACK back with us. MARIJN, how are you today?
Good, Jack. How are you, mate?
Fantastic. Well, this is round two. We've been through the trenches once, but I'm going to haul you over the coals again, mate. And let's talk about PHYSITRACK. So for listeners, if you're not familiar, MARIJN is the Australian director. He's kind of the go-to guru for PHYSITRACK across Australia and the South Pacific and Southeast Asia. PHYSITRACK is a software that encapsulates exercise prescription, outcome measures, adherence tracking, patient education, telehealth. It does just about everything. And so MARIJN, today, I want us to dig into some of the features and the technical elements of PHYSITRACK and how listeners, how clinic owners can get the most out of it. What do you reckon?
Sounds good. Let's do it.
Righto. So let's run through a couple of those features. In a previous episode, we touched on the volume of exercises that PHYSITRACK has in it. And at its core, originally, was an exercise prescription software. Some of the other features, though, are probably a little less well known. Things like patient education. Can you talk us through the different types, whether it's videos or otherwise, and why patient education in an app is useful?
Yeah, absolutely. So when we launched it, you're completely right. It was all about exercise prescription and a little bit of tracking of certain outcomes. One of the key things that we always set ourselves out to do was make it as easy and as engaging for clients when it comes to whether it's following exercises or reading up on educational content. So a lot of video content, in particular for exercise. That's basically all we have. So it's all video based. With the educational side of things, we saw a big need, and there's also a ton of research out there that really shows that providing better education to clients does have a positive impact on health outcomes. Right. So we launched that feature probably about a year and a half, 2 years ago. So it's a separate area in our library with both PDFs and videos. Mm-hmm. So videos around a number of different conditions. It could be anything from ankle sprain to diabetes, workplace type of education as well, and workplace health. So quite broad. It's a growing part of our library, and it's really also meant as an area where practitioners can upload their own content. So it's really, and obviously it's a very clinical component of our platform, but a lot of clinicians, they also use it as a marketing tool. So they might upload, it might be a PDF with an overview of their services, for example, or they might have created a promo video in the past about their clinic and what they do. So it's that kind of content you can also upload to that part of your library. So it basically kind of cuts on both the clinical and the marketing side, and clinicians love it. It's again, it's something different compared to other solutions out there.
Yeah, it really is something that sets PHYSITRACK apart from the other simpler exercise prescription options. The education, though, is a really interesting element. Like you touched on there, I've heard it mentioned that education is just as, if not more important than the exercises themselves. And we know that PHYSITRACK is really powerful on tracking data. I'd be interested to know if you've had a look on the back end whether those practitioners who prescribe exercises and education get better outcomes than those practitioners who just prescribe exercises. Have you got any insight on that?
No, look. So we don't, as a company, we don't have access to the data. It's not our data. So it's available to practitioners, obviously, to look at. It's their data. But it's an interesting idea to actually look at it. And I'm sure there'll be a university knocking on our door at some stage to say, hey, we actually would like to see whether adding education to exercises delivers better outcomes than just providing exercises. So it's actually a good example how PHYSITRACK can be used for that kind of purpose, to actually do some research on that. Absolutely.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, we've dabbled with some preliminary case studies on that very topic, and we found that education does a couple of things, MARIJN. It improves the clinical outcomes, which is paramount to what we do, but it creates an extra element of the client experience. And I think this is something that you could touch on for us here, is that PHYSITRACK provides clinicians the opportunity to communicate with patients outside of the traditional confines of the consult room. So what are some of the ways that PHYSITRACK enables that? We've talked about exercises and education. What are some of the elements that clinicians can engage with patients?
Yeah, so that's I guess it's really the I suppose the feedback loop that we create on one hand. So obviously in the past, with let's say with giving people a piece of paper or even just sending some videos, some exercise videos via email, you were always missing that feedback loop. So as a practitioner, you would never know, what did my client do? Did they do their exercises? Are they experiencing severe pain? And any kind of other outcomes. So we kind of close that loop with PHYSITRACK, where clients now report back to the practitioner on sets and reps that they completed, pain scores, RPE, and outcome measures as well. So that's one of the key ways for practitioners to have better insight. But on the client side, equally important, of course. Clients actually really enjoy, in general, they really enjoy that kind of engagement where they know, okay, yep, they feel a sense of accomplishment when they tick off their exercises for today. So it's off their list. They don't have to worry about it anymore. And at the same time, they know that their practitioner also knows that they've done their exercises. So that's probably one component. I think the other part is obviously the telehealth and secure messaging part of PHYSITRACK. So the secure messaging is a great way for clients just to, through inside the app, quick message. It might be a question, it might just be, everything went well, just to give some feedback. And again, as a practitioner, you always have a record of that conversation. So you can always have a look and see, all right, maybe 5 minutes before the client comes in, I have a quick look to see what did they do, what kind of feedback did they leave for me. So at least you're better prepared as a practitioner. So you can be a lot more targeted when you have a conversation with the client during the appointment, instead of just everyone guessing what happened during the last 2 weeks, which no one knows.
Like, it really is a game changer, MARIJN, when you're able to interact with a patient outside of the confines of a consult, especially through the secure messaging. It means that when a patient comes in for a consult, that you hit the ground running, that there's no wasted time, you don't need to catch up on did a patient do their exercises or not, or did they have problems with this, did you need to... I mean, the truth is that a lot of practitioners, our clinic and clinics we work with through Clinic Mastery, you're able to change exercise programs in between consults so that you can avoid things that are aggravating or increase a program. What it means from a patient point of view is that they don't need to wait until their next consult to have an interaction with their health professional, and it means they get better outcomes as a result.
Yep.
I'd love to just wind back a little bit because you skipped over some of the most fascinating elements of PHYSITRACK there around things like adherence, pain scores, RPE, sets and reps. Can you go into a little bit more detail and tell us what PHYSITRACK actually provides for those measures?
Yeah, absolutely. So whenever you prescribe an exercise program, you obviously set anything like sets and reps and weights and rest and whatever parameters you want to set per exercise. Then when you assign that program to a client, you can choose to track, like I said, adherence, pain scores, RPE, HRMAX for some of the cardio exercises as well. So you can track a lot of different health outcomes with that particular client's program if you want to. So obviously, depending on the client, depending on the condition, if it's an acute condition, it'll be super valuable, obviously, to be able to track that in a very detailed manner. If it's a client with perhaps a chronic condition where you just want to give them like a 3-month, 4-month maintenance program, perhaps you don't want them to report back to you every single day. So you can really set that on a client-by-client level. But if you have a client, let's say, with an acute condition where you do want to track those kind of outcomes, the great thing is with PHYSITRACK, you can actually set to receive certain notifications from PHYSITRACK. For example, when a client is experiencing some severe pain, for example, or if a client's adherence drops below a certain percentage. So it's really about I suppose proactively, the system proactively making it work for you, rather than having to jump into the system every single day. Instead, you can actually just focus on the exceptions, and again, as a practitioner, also save a lot of time and be more efficient in the clinic. So there's a ton of, I suppose, different parameters and outcomes that you can focus on, but also there are some smart ways of making the system work for you as well.
It's fascinating the level of insight that a practitioner is able to garner from that between consult time period is fascinating. The truth is, for practitioners, whether you're a practitioner that prescribes exercises a lot or perhaps not, and maybe PHYSITRACK isn't something that you would use, what you want to think about is how can you communicate with your patients between consults so that A, your client gets a better experience, and B, the value you can provide in consult is amplified exponentially. And for those who are using exercise, PHYSITRACK is brilliant for that. Let's move on then, and let's talk about outcome measures, questionnaires, things like that. PHYSITRACK aside, those who deal in an insurance environment, whether it's the NHS in the UK or the ACC in New Zealand or in Australia across the work cover bodies that vary state by state, we all know that these insurance companies depend on questionnaires and outcome measures, often at the start of programs, at the end, to justify ongoing treatment. I know that was a bit of background, MARIJN, but can you speak to the types of questionnaires that are in PHYSITRACK and how you solve that problem of dealing with insurance companies and outcome measures?
Yeah, absolutely. So what we've done in PHYSITRACK is once we said, okay, well, let's start tracking some outcomes. Took it basically one step further, and so I think, well, at the moment, obviously those outcome measures, as you mentioned, especially for the insurers, are a very important part of the whole patient journey. At the moment, that's done, or in the past at least, it's done, and still probably done quite a bit manually, where clients are just given a piece of paper. They have to try to remember to complete it, and then the clinician has to somehow type it into a separate form, perhaps, or put it into a computer. So a lot of manual handling with a lot of room for error. So what we did is actually set up. I think we just clocked over 50 of the most used outcome measure surveys, all clinically validated outcome measures. So anything from Kuznets score, Oswestry, Rebro, basically all the ones that you can think of, Dash. So, and by doing that, what you can do as a clinician, you can assign one or multiple prompts to a client. The client completes those outcome measures inside their app. So they already use their app for their exercises and for education. So it's still the same app. Super easy. In particular, actually elderly clients, they really enjoy it because it is very intuitive. And the great thing is that as a client, you have to complete your outcome measure before you can move on to your exercises for that day. So there's a real incentive for clients to complete that, which obviously drives adherence in terms of completing outcome measures. And as a clinician, you have real-time insight into the outcomes data, whether it be the total score for the outcome measure, whether it's the individual questions and answers of the outcome measure as well. So it's right there for you then to save it as a PDF and then email to the insurer, or print it out and add to the file, whatever you want to do with it, basically. So it's all about making it easy for clinicians and clients as well. Automation
is magic. It means that things don't get missed, right? And so, like you said, you can lock down exercises until patients have completed the questionnaire or the outcome measure. And then you can also set it to repeat at certain intervals, right? So if something needs to be completed weekly or monthly or daily even, and you can also, correct me if I'm wrong, create your own custom outcome measures. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. So if I think we cover quite a few, but if you're missing any, you can indeed set up your own. It's just basically building your own outcome measure inside PHYSITRACK. It's super easy. And the interesting part is that quite a few clinics also started using the outcome measure component for client satisfaction surveys. So I said, they might prescribe, let's say, a 4-week exercise program, and then the very final outcome measure might be the exit score of, let's say, a Kuznets score, but it might also include a separate questionnaire with, how did you rate your service? How did you rate your overall experience? Whatever you want to ask the client. Right. And so again, it's a great way to automate that the component of, and again, not just the clinical side, but also, I suppose, the marketing and business side as well.
For sure. I love it. Okay, and so the list keeps going on. Let's talk about telehealth. So PHYSITRACK really is a leader in the telehealth space, but can you, before we go into the practicalities of how PHYSITRACK addresses that, can you speak to the telehealth environment, why remote consultations is important? What's the insurance framework like? Give us the 411.
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess, if any country would benefit from telehealth, it probably would be Australia. I mean, very similar to, whether it's Canada or the US in terms of the sheer distances and just the, I suppose, the benefits of enabling, more clients to be receiving quality healthcare, regardless where they live. So that was really our focal point from day one when we said, okay, we do have to include this. We know where healthcare is going. So let's make it an integral part of the product. So that's how we kind of started. Launched, like I said, probably about nearly 18 months ago now. And I think it's been fantastic. A lot of clinics, despite the lack of insurer rebates, whether it's Medicare or private health, a lot of clinics started offering it as an additional service. And the great thing too is that whether you are a physiotherapist just having a 10-15 minute follow-up consultation with a client where no manual treatment is involved. Or, of course, if you're a dietitian, a psychologist, where there is no manual treatment involved at all, it's a great way, again, to see clients, quote unquote, but also, like, let's say, if you're a psychologist, sometimes clients just prefer to be at home in their own environment instead of going out into a clinic. It's a great way to actually provide a better service to those kind of clients. So it's been interesting. But you mentioned insurance. It's indeed the missing piece in the puzzle, telehealth puzzle so far. And obviously it's there is some rebates here and there for GP consultations when it comes to telehealth, depending on where you live and in which radius away from clinics. But we're working very hard. So the APA, I think they're doing a lot of work behind the scenes in terms of advocacy, both with Medicare and the private health insurers to get that changed, and actually for telehealth consultations to become an item code, which is something that we all aspire to. And at the same time, we also as PHYSITRACK, we work directly and have conversations with private health insurers directly to see, can we change things around, and for them to understand, I suppose, the value of providing telehealth consultations. Yeah,
sure. And at the time of this recording, in May 2018, can you give us any indicator on if Medicare or insurance companies are ever likely to cover it?
Yeah, I think I think they will. I think if I look at where the conversations are heading, I think they will. I think there are probably, from time to time, there are concerns around, is this just, are clients going to be overserviced? Because it is just very easy to say, we're going to just have a quick, 5-minute conversation. So it's going to be around, some guidelines. I think that the private health insurers would like to see in place. Training is another component. So obviously, as a practitioner, basically providing telehealth consultations is slightly different from an in-person consultation. So, what happens if a client does need hands-on treatment? How do you basically work that? So, it's kind of very practical in a way, very practical kind of questions and perhaps concerns that they've raised. So, so we're working with them to address those. And again, we work closely with the APA on that as well. So, I think that was a long answer. The short answer is yes. I think insurers will come around. I think they also acknowledge that premiums keep going up, and it's all about finding more efficiencies on one hand, but also ensuring that that more and more consumers will have access to quality healthcare. So I think everything is there, including technology, to make that happen, I think. Yeah.
And I love that you guys have built it and worry about the intricacies later. I was talking with Karen Finnan from online.physio, who's built a practice based off remote physio. And despite, I guess the message here for listeners is, despite the insurance frameworks, don't let that hold you back, whether it's Medicare framework or private health. There are plenty of patients out there that are willing to pay for solutions, that are willing to invest in their healthcare, and whether that's because they're remote and the vast nature of Australia, or don't forget to think about those patients who might just have lifestyle restrictions, and they might live around the corner, but they can't get away from the family member they care for, or they work 70 hours a week and they can't make it into a clinic. So don't be bound by insurance frameworks. Don't let that hold us back from pushing our professions forward. Some really interesting work we've seen inside Clinic Mastery. One of our members, an EP, exercise physiologist, is really taking things like telehealth forward and using the exercise prescription software for massive changes in his clinic and in his practice. More broadly, MARIJN, can you speak to how technology can really enhance the client experience, the patient experience, and why clinics should embrace technology from an experience point of view?
Yeah, absolutely. I think technology, when used well, I think on the practitioner side can free up a lot of time,
right?
And of course, that's time that they can spend with the client instead of trying to work out things and trying to have systems talk to each other, for example, and
wrestling with the photocopier.
Exactly. Yeah. Hopefully, all the fax machines have left the building by now, but it's. I think that there's so many opportunities nowadays, and if you look at where technology is heading in general, I think blockchain is a bit of a buzzword at the moment, but even within healthcare, I'm sure it'll have some really good opportunities down the track. But I think more on a practical level right now, and it's we had some really good conversations at the APA a few months ago, and some brainstorm sessions around interoperability, for example. So how can we make sure that systems actually talk to each other rather than having just run 3-4 different systems next to each other in a very siloed way? And that's one of the key things that we have addressed and continue to address at PHYSITRACK as well, in terms of integrating with platforms where it makes sense. Obviously, when it comes to running a clinic, practice management system is obviously the key in terms of your day-to-day running of the business. So we in Australia, we basically integrate with all commonly used practice management systems, and definitely the cloud-based ones, which means you can open your client from your PMS into PHYSITRACK. We now started uploading information back from PHYSITRACK into the practice management system as well. So really just, again, is about time saving on one hand, can be spent with the client. And obviously, when it comes to PHYSITRACK specifically and the client experience, it's all about, okay, what do you want to be remembered for as a clinician? Of course, there's the clinical side in terms of getting the patient better. But when it comes to the experience, it's, well, are you giving the client a piece of paper or a very clunky app that that is crashing all the time? Or do you want to give them something that is really easy to use and really adds value to the overall experience? And and that's what we try to do, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, you certainly hit the nail on the head there around automation, meaning that you can provide a better in-person experience and then in between consults that experience. And can you speak to some of the maybe the automations and the integrations that you're working with, things like Clinic apps and what sort of automations that might have?
Yeah. So Clinic apps is that's a really exciting one. That shouldn't be too far off. So we're about to integrate with Clinic apps, and obviously what it means is that based on, let's say, certain data being generated by clients inside PHYSITRACK, you can start sending out communications via Clinic apps based on those on the client behavior. So one example might be a client was assigned an outcome measure. So maybe an hour later, the client might receive an email say, hey, we included an outcome measure with your exercise program inside PHYSITRACK. Make sure you complete it. It might be about the client experiencing some severe pain, and they might have that 3 days in a row. Clinic apps might then, depending on your settings, might then send a communication to clients saying, "Hey, I can see you're really struggling. If you need a follow-up appointment, let us know. If you want us to give you a call, let us know." So it's all about using data that's generated and that's there already, and then base some really interesting communications on that through Clinic apps. So again, automating that component obviously saves a ton of time, and also means that the client feels better looked after as well.
For sure. It's an amazing experience. MARIJN, we really appreciate your time today. If people want to give PHYSITRACK a go, maybe they don't want to go all in, or it's a bit of a jump for them, is there trial? Where should people go?
Yeah, so our homepage, physitrack.com, is always a good place to start. There's a big button, start demo, so you get a free demo to have a play around, or you can sign up for a free trial, 7-day trial, to have a play around. And if you decide to go ahead, it doesn't cost you an arm and leg either. Especially as Clinic Mastery members, you only pay $7.99 per month per practitioner. So I think it's a nice and easy way to get started with digital health for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And listeners, you can head to see PHYSITRACK in action, to see some of these advanced features. You can head over to clinicmastery.com/PHYSITRACK1. The links will be in the show notes, and you can see how it works in behind the scenes there when it comes to telehealth. There's actually a live telehealth consult demo that you can check out, as well as some of the advanced features and tracking of those outcome measures. MARIJN, thank you so much for your time. And if people want to find out more, they can head to physitrack.com, like you said. And if you need any of the notes from this episode, you can head to www.clinicmastery.com/podcast. All the show notes will be there, the links to everything that we've mentioned today. And if you want to grow your clinic and take it to the next level, you can find our free online course at that same URL, clinicmastery.com/podcast. MARIJN, thank you for joining us. We look forward to talking to you down the track, maybe when insurance companies have jumped on board, or who knows, maybe when PHYSITRACK's incorporated VR into allied health consults. But we really appreciate your time, mate. And thanks for joining us on the podcast.
Thanks, Jack. Cheers.
This is the Grow My Clinic podcast by Clinic Mastery, where we help you deliver amazing client experiences to grow your clinic.